Karen snatches Black CEO's first-class seat moments later. He owns the plane viral. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's get back to the story. FK off. That's not your seat. The words detonated across the first-class cabin before the aircraft had even pushed back from the gate. Conversation snapped in half. A champagne flute paused mid-air. The low hum of overhead bins closing faded into a silence so sudden it felt rehearsed. She didn't move. One leg crossed over the other, nude heel resting deliberately on the empty cream leather seat beside her. The seat with 2A stitched into the headrest. The seat printed on the boarding pass in his hand. Black blazer. Tailored dress. Designer bag angled just enough for the logo to face outward. Sunglasses still on, though they were indoors. She looked up at him slowly, like he was a service interruption. That's taken, she added, voice cool and controlled. Economy's that way? A few passengers shifted uncomfortably. Someone in 3C leaned into the aisle. A phone tilted, subtle but recording. He remained standing. Dark blue hoodie. Clean sneakers. No visible watch. No suit jacket. No signals of wealth the cabin was trained to respect. Just a boarding pass held steady between his fingers. That's my seat, he said. Not loud. Not defensive. Just certain. Her lips curved slightly. Men like you don't fly first class. There it was. Not confusion. Not a mistake. A verdict.
The air thickened.
A flight attendant near the galley hesitated before approaching. Her smile was professional but tight. Sir, may I see your boarding pass? No one asked the woman for hers. He handed it over without breaking eye contact. The attendant scanned it. A soft beep. Her eyes flicked to the screen, then back to the pass, then back to the screen again. Behind them, a whisper, "This is going to be awkward." The woman shifted but didn't remove her leg. You can't just print something and walk up here, she said louder now. It doesn't work like that. He exhaled once.
Slow.
Measured. He had seen this before. 16. Escorted out of a hotel lobby in his Sunday best. 23. Asked if he was catering staff at his own networking event. 31. Laughed at in a private terminal lounge until his wire transfer cleared. Different city. Same tone. The attendant cleared her throat softly. Ma'am, the system shows this seat assigned to. That's impossible, the woman cut in. I was upgraded. Her heel pressed more firmly into the leather. A silent claim of territory. Passengers were fully watching now. No one pretending anymore. He tilted his head slightly. Check the name again, he said quietly. The attendant swallowed and glanced back at her device. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here? Now back to Marcus. The attendant's voice came softer this time. It matches, sir. A flicker crossed the woman's face. Not fear. Irritation. You're holding up the flight, she snapped. Just sit somewhere else. He didn't move. Didn't argue. Didn't explain. He simply stood there in the aisle of first-class calm as turbulence building beneath clear skies. The plane doors were still open, but something else had already closed. And everyone in that cabin felt it. The cabin didn't reset. It recalibrated. People weren't pretending to mind their business anymore. Phones were angled openly now. A man across the aisle lowered his newspaper completely. A woman near the window removed her AirPods. They were waiting. The flight attendant shifted her weight, eyes flicking between the screen and the woman still occupying 2A.
Mom, she said carefully, the manifest shows this seat assigned to Marcus Carter.
The name hung there. Marcus didn't react. The woman let out a short laugh. And I'm supposed to care who that is? A ripple of discomfort passed through the first 2 rows. It's just a mix-up, she continued, waving a dismissive hand. I was upgraded at the desk. You can put him somewhere else. Put him somewhere else. Not ask. Not verify. Relocate. Marcus finally looked away from her and toward the attendant. Was there a reassignment logged? He asked. His tone wasn't confrontational. It was procedural. The attendant hesitated. I don't see one. The woman straightened slightly now, sensing control slipping. I don't know what system you're looking at, but I'm not moving, she said sharply. I have status with this airline. There it was again. Status. The invisible currency of belonging. Marcus nodded once as if noting something internally. Understood. He stepped half an inch closer to the seat, not invading space, but closing distance. The cabin felt smaller. A man in 4 whispered she should just check her ticket. Another voice answered, why didn't they check hers first? The questions were spreading. The woman removed her sunglasses, now revealing eyes no longer amused, just irritated. You're making a scene, she snapped at Marcus. He met her gaze evenly. I haven't raised my voice. That landed? Because it was true. The only volume in the cabin had come from her. The attendant cleared her throat again, this time more firmly. Ma'am, may I please see your boarding pass a beat? Silence stretched thin. For the first time, the request had shifted directions. The woman didn't reach for her purse. Instead, she looked around at the watching passengers, at the phones, at the narrowing social space around her. This is ridiculous, she muttered. You're questioning me over him. Not over the system. Not over the seat. Over him. Marcus folded his boarding pass once neatly and slipped it into his pocket. He wasn't going anywhere. I'll wait, he said calmly. 3 words. No threat. No emotion. Just patience. And patience in a room full of people expecting anger felt far more dangerous. Near the galley, a junior flight attendant leaned toward a colleague and whispered, I've seen that name before. Her colleague frowned. We're internal briefing last quarter, I think. The woman in 2, caught none of that. She was still calculating, still assuming this would bend in her favor. Outside the aircraft windows, ground crew disconnected the jet bridge. The door sealed shut with a hollow thud. The cabin lights dimmed slightly. The plane was now committed to departure, and so was everyone inside it. The aircraft began to taxi, a slow, deliberate roll backward from the gate. The subtle hum beneath the cabin floor deepened. Overhead, bins clicked shut one by one. But 2A was still contested territory. Ma'am, the flight attendant tried again firmer. Now I need to verify your boarding pass. The woman's jaw tightened. This is harassment, she said sharply. I was upgraded at the counter.
Do you know how much I fly with this airline? Marcus didn't respond.
He simply remained in the aisle, still composed, impossible to ignore. The junior flight attendant near the galley stepped forward hesitantly. Emily, she said softly to the lead attendant, can I see the manifest? Emily passed her the tablet. The junior attendant's eyes scanned the screen. Her brows furrowed. It's not just assigned, she whispered. It's flagged. Flagged how Emily murmured back. Priority, level visibility. Marcus caught the exchange but gave no sign that he had. Across the aisle, the man who had been recording shifted closer. This is wild, he muttered under his breath. All this over a seat that already has his name on it. The woman finally reached into her designer bag with sharp, irritated movements. She pulled out her boarding pass and handed it over without looking at Marcus. There. Happy Emily scanned it. A single, unmistakable tone. Not first class. Premium economy. Seat 14C. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was surgical. Precise. The junior attendant looked up slowly. Ma'am, your boarding pass is for 14C. The woman blinked once. That's wrong. It's printed here, Emily replied, turning the screen so she could see. The woman leaned forward, eyes darting across the digital layout of the cabin map. 2, a highlighted in blue with Marcus Carter beside it. No, she said, voice tightening. The gate agent said I was being moved. There's no reassignment log, the junior attendant added carefully. A low murmur moved through the cabin like a ripple through water. She just sat down, someone whispered. She never showed a ticket. Marcus remained steady. He didn't smirk, didn't gloat, didn't even sigh. He simply asked one question. Was there ever a confirmed upgrade? Emily shook her head. Not in the system, sir. Sir. The shift was subtle but unmistakable. The woman felt it too. This is ridiculous, she snapped, color rising in her cheeks. I'm not walking back there in front of everyone. The statement wasn't about comfort. It was about pride. Marcus studied her for a moment. Then he stepped slightly aside, clearing the aisle, not retreating, just making space. You don't have to, he said calmly. You just have to move. A few passengers couldn't hold back quiet laughs. The woman's composure cracked for half a second. Who do you think you are? She demanded. The aircraft paused at the runway line. Engines building. Cabin lights dimmed another shade. Marcus held her gaze evenly. I'm the man assigned to 2A, he said. Nothing more. But the junior flight attendant was still staring at the manifest. At the flag next to his name. At the internal code she had only seen during executive briefings. And suddenly, her hands weren't steady anymore. The engines roared. Not takeoff yet, just power building. The aircraft paused at the runway threshold, waiting for clearance. Inside first class, something else was waiting too. The junior flight attendant's fingers hovered over the screen. That internal flag beside Marcus Carter's name wasn't decorative. It was coded. Executive tier. Restricted visibility. Board-level routing. She swallowed. Emily, she whispered quietly, turning the tablet slightly away from the passengers. This isn't a normal priority tag. Emily's jaw tightened. What kind? The junior attendant leaned closer. Board access clearance. Emily went still. Across the aisle, the woman in 2A stood abruptly, refusing to sit but still refusing to move back. This is insane, she snapped. You're stalling the entire flight because of a typo. Marcus adjusted the cuff of his hoodie slightly. No tension in his shoulders. No heat in his eyes. Just observation. Emily straightened. Ma'am, I need you to step into the aisle. For what to resolve this properly? The woman laughed again, but the sound wasn't sharp anymore. It wavered. You're taking his side. Marcus finally spoke not to her, but to the attendants. May I make a suggestion? Both women looked at him immediately. Go ahead, sir, Emily replied. Call the operations desk, he said calmly. Reference the executive manifest overlay. The junior attendant's eyes widened. He knew the terminology. Passengers noticed that shift too. The man filming leaned forward. Executive, what the woman's confidence flickered again. You're bluffing, she said quickly. No one talks like that unless they're pretending. Marcus met her stare. I don't pretend. Outside, the plane received clearance. The engines intensified, a low vibration traveling through the floor. But instead of accelerating down the runway, the aircraft slowed again, holding position. Emily stepped toward the interphone near the galley. Her voice was controlled but quieter now. Captain, we have a seating discrepancy in first. Requesting manifest confirmation. A pause. Then the captain's voice returned through the cabin speaker, neutral but alert. Understood. Stand by. Every passenger heard it. This wasn't a minor disagreement anymore. This had reached the cockpit. The woman in two felt it. The social gravity had shifted. She crossed her arms defensively. I have platinum status, she insisted. You can check my account. We did, the junior attendant replied softly. It doesn't override this. Override. The word hung there. Marcus slipped his hands into his hoodie pockets. Still calm. Still centered. The captain's voice returned this time, not over the cabin speaker, but directly through Emily's headset. Her expression changed in real time. Professional mask dissolving into something closer to shock. Yes, Captain, she said slowly. Understood. She turned back toward Marcus. The entire first-class cabin watched her face. Mr. Carter, she said, carefully, respectfully, now the captain has asked that we resolve this immediately. The woman's breath caught. Resolve what she demanded. Emily didn't answer her. She looked only at Marcus. The captain would like to speak with you directly. And just like that, the balance of power shifted without Marcus raising his voice even once. The cabin lights dimmed further as the aircraft idled at the runway. Engines humming, passengers silent, every eye forward. But the gravity of the moment had shifted entirely to 2A. The captain would like to speak with you directly. Emily's voice carried just enough for the first 3 rows to hear. Marcus didn't react immediately. He studied her for a fraction of a second, not suspicious, not impressed, just measuring. Of course, he replied calmly. The woman beside him let out a sharp, nervous laugh. Oh, please. You think they're calling you up there for tea? No one joined her this time? Emily stepped slightly closer to Marcus. He's aware of your identity, sir? That word landed heavier than the engines. Identity. The woman froze. Marcus tilted his head slightly. Which part, he asked evenly. Emily hesitated, then lowered her voice, but not enough to hide it from the nearest passengers. The ownership disclosure. A visible crack ran through the woman's composure. What ownership, she demanded. The junior attendant spoke this time, voice steady despite her racing pulse. Mr. Carter is listed under executive board visibility. Silence. Thick. Kick. Absolute. The man filming whispered, "Oh my God." Marcus remained still in the aisle. He didn't smile. Didn't gloat. Didn't even look at the woman. He simply asked Emily one question. Has the cockpit confirmed yes, sir? There it was again. Sir. The woman's eyes darted between them. You're telling me this man, she stopped herself mid-sentence. This man. Not this passenger. Not Mr. Carter. Just this man. Marcus finally turned to face her fully. Up close now, she could see it. Not arrogance. Not anger. Control. You told me I didn't belong here, he said quietly. No raised tone. No accusation. Just fact. Her throat tightened. I didn't know he didn't let her finish. That's the point. The engine surged again as the aircraft began its slow turn onto the runway centerline. The timing felt cinematic. Relentless. Emily spoke carefully. Ma'am, we need you to gather your belongings. The woman blinked rapidly. You're not seriously making me walk back there. Marcus stepped aside, clearing the aisle with deliberate grace. I believe you said economy was that way. A few passengers couldn't contain their reaction this time. Soft gasps, quiet laughter, one whispered, wow. The woman grabbed her designer bag with stiff movements. Her heel slipped slightly as she stepped out of 2A. For the first time since boarding, she looked small. Not because of the seat, but because the room had seen her. All of her. Marcus remained standing until she passed him. Then calmly, he placed one hand on the headrest of 2A. not claiming it, not triumphantly, just returning to what had always been his.
Behind him, the junior attendant's hands still trembled.
Because this wasn't just a passenger dispute. This was a test. And everyone in that cabin had just revealed who they were. The plane accelerated. And so did the consequences. The aircraft lifted. A smooth, powerful ascent metal rising through air like nothing had happened inside it. But in first class, everything had changed.
Marcus lowered himself into 2A without ceremony.
No dramatic pause. No lingering glance. He simply sat, buckled in, folded his hands loosely in his lap. The woman now walking the narrow aisle toward row 14 felt every pair of eyes on her back. Not mocking, not cheering, witnessing. That was worse. Emily exhaled slowly and returned to her station posture, straighter now, but awareness sharpened. Cabin secure, she spoke into the interphone. Yet nothing felt routine anymore. The junior attendant leaned toward her. Captain confirmed he's one of the largest individual stakeholders, she whispered. Emily nodded once. I know. The words had traveled quickly. Not loudly, but efficiently. Ownership disclosure. Board visibility. Direct cockpit acknowledgement. This wasn't rumor. It was hierarchy. Across the aisle, the man who had been filming lowered his phone, though he didn't stop recording entirely. Sir, he said carefully to Marcus, are you actually? Marcus lifted a hand slightly. Not dismissive, just measured. Let's keep this a quiet flight. That response carried more authority than any reveal. The man nodded immediately. Of course. Emily approached Marcus once more, this time with a different posture entirely. Mr. Carter, on behalf of the crew, I apologize for the situation. Her voice didn't shake now, but it held weight. Marcus looked up at her calmly. You followed the system. It wasn't praise. It wasn't absolution. It was assessment. The junior attendant stepped forward hesitantly. I recognize the internal flag, she admitted, from a board security training. Marcus studied her for a second longer than he had studied anyone else. What's your name, Lena, sir? Lena, he repeated evenly. You checked the manifest before assuming? Her breath caught slightly. Yes, sir. He nodded once. That matters. 3 simple words. But Lena felt them land deeper than any corporate evaluation. At row 14, the woman finally dropped into her assigned seat, face turned toward the window. She didn't remove her sunglasses this time. She disappeared into anonymity, and that more than relocation was the true consequence. Back in first class, the flight leveled off above the clouds. The cabin lights softened. Service resumed cautiously, but the air remained charged, because something subtle had occurred. Marcus hadn't revealed everything. He hadn't announced titles, hadn't corrected her insult publicly. He had allowed the system to confirm him, allowed behavior to expose itself. Emily returned with a glass of water. From the captain, she said quietly. Marcus accepted it. Thank you. Then he looked out the window briefly before turning back toward the aisle. The storm had passed, but the lesson hadn't. And somewhere between ground and sky, the standard in that cabin had just been raised without a single shout. The seatbelt sign remained on. Clouds stretched endlessly beneath the wings, soft, distant, detached from the tension that still lingered in first class. Marcus opened his laptop. Not abruptly. Not theatrically. Just part of his routine. The silver logo caught the cabin light as the screen came alive. A secure login portal. 2-step authentication. A dashboard only a handful of people in the company ever saw. Lena noticed. Not the screen itself, she would never stare, but the interface design. Internal. Executive tier. Her breath steadied. Emily returned from the cockpit posture, composed but face different now. not intimidated. Aligned. She stopped beside Marcus's seat. The captain would like to formally apologize in person once we reach cruising altitude, she said quietly. Marcus looked up. That won't be necessary. Emily hesitated. Sir, he insisted. A pause. Marcus closed his laptop halfway. Then I'll speak with him briefly. Across the aisle, the man who had been recording finally leaned closer again.
So it's true, he whispered.
You're on the board. Marcus met his eyes calmly. I invest in systems, he replied. I don't interfere with them. The answer wasn't confirmation, but it wasn't denial either. A few rows back, murmurs continued low reflective. She just assumed. She never checked. She said, men like you? The words were being replayed now not by Marcus, but by witnesses. That was the difference. At row 14, the woman sat rigidly staring at nothing. A flight attendant offered her a drink. She declined. Not because she wasn't thirsty, because visibility now felt unbearable. Back in 2, a Marcus reopened his laptop. An internal message blinked onto the screen. Flight 227 seating escalation flagged. Operations had already logged it. Time stamp. Crew names. Passenger statements. He didn't need to press anything. The system had done its job. Emily returned once more. Mr. Carter, she said, voice steady. Corporate operations has requested a post-flight review. Of course, they had. Marcus closed the laptop fully this time. Good. Not angry. Not vindictive. Just precise. Lena stood nearby, absorbing everything, not just the authority, but the restraint. Marcus turned slightly toward her. Do you know why I didn't say who I was immediately? She shook her head softly. Because identity shouldn't determine respect, he said. Policy should. The engines hummed steadily at cruising altitude. Calm now. Balanced. But everyone in that cabin understood something irreversible had occurred. This hadn't been about a seat. It had been about who gets questioned and who gets believed. And at 35,000 feet above the ground, a hierarchy had been quietly rewritten. Cruising altitude settled in like a held breath finally released. Cabin lights softened to a calm glow. Glassware clinked gently as service resumed. To anyone boarding mid-air, it would have looked like an ordinary premium flight. But nothing about row 2 was ordinary anymore. The captain stepped out of the cockpit 20 minutes later. Not hurried. Not dramatic. Measured? Passengers noticed immediately. Captains didn't walk into first class mid-flight unless something required wait. He stopped beside 2A. Mr. Carter. Not over the intercom. Not whispered. Clear. Respectful. Marcus closed the document he'd been reviewing and looked up. Captain. The exchange was brief, but the temperature in the cabin shifted again. I want to personally apologize, the captain said. This situation should have been resolved before boarding. Marcus studied him for a moment. You resolved it once you had the full picture. That's not enough, the captain replied evenly. It shouldn't require a full picture to treat someone correctly. Several passengers heard that and nodded. Marcus leaned back slightly. You train for safety, he said. You should also train for bias. The captain didn't flinch. Noted. Behind them, Lena stood perfectly still, absorbing every word like a lesson no classroom could provide. The woman in row 14 stared straight ahead, but her posture had changed. No more rigid pride, just awareness. The captain continued. Corporate operations has already opened a conduct review. Your name triggered immediate board notification. Marcus gave the slightest nod. I expected that. Would you like to escalate further? The captain asked carefully. The cabin stilled. This was the moment. The power to end careers, to suspend crew, to issue statements before landing. Marcus paused. Not for drama, for precision. No, he said finally. Emily blinked slightly. The captain waited. Marcus continued, voice calm but firm. I don't want punishment driven by who I am. He glanced briefly toward row 14 just once. I want correction driven by what happened. That distinction landed harder than retaliation ever could. The captain nodded slowly. Understood. He extended his hand. Marcus shook it. No theatrics. No applause. Just accountability at 35 feet. As the captain returned to the cockpit, the man across the aisle whispered under his breath, "That's real power." Marcus reopened his laptop. The system had logged everything. The review would move forward. Not because a powerful man had been inconvenienced, but because a standard had been broken. And in that quiet cabin above the clouds, everyone understood something simple and unshakable: respect should never depend on recognition. The flight began its slow descent. A subtle dip in altitude. A shift in engine tone.
Seatbelt signs flickering back on.
Outside the window, the city appeared small at first, then widening beneath the wing. Inside the cabin, something quieter was settling. Marcus closed his laptop one final time. An internal confirmation email had arrived minutes earlier. Flight 227 incident logged. Conduct review initiated. Bias training audit scheduled. No dramatic language. No executive fireworks. Just process. That was enough. Lena approached carefully, holding a fresh glass of water she didn't need to deliver. She said softly, "I wanted to thank you." Marcus looked up. For what? For not turning it into something louder. He studied her expression. You think it wasn't loud? She hesitated, then smiled faintly. It was, she admitted. Just not the way people expect. He nodded once. Noise doesn't change culture, he said. Standards do. Across the aisle, the man who had filmed earlier leaned forward again, but this time without his phone raised. My daughter flies alone sometimes, he said quietly. I'm glad you didn't let that slide. Marcus met his gaze. I didn't let the system slide, he corrected gently. That's different. At row 14, the woman finally stood to retrieve her bag from the overhead bin as the plane lowered through the clouds. For a brief second, her eyes met Marcus's across the cabin. Not defiant. Not angry. Just aware. She looked away first. The aircraft touched down smoothly. Rubber meeting runway. Engines reversing. Passengers clapping lightly out of habit. But in first class, the applause felt misplaced. This hadn't been about turbulence. It had been about truth. As the plane taxied toward the gate, the captain's voice returned over the speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the entire crew, thank you for flying with us today. A slight pause. And thank you for your patience. It wasn't directed at everyone, and they all knew it. Marcus stood when the seatbelt sign turned off. No rush. No priority exit. He waited, ate it. As passengers filtered past, a few nodded respectfully. One offered a quiet, safe travels. Lena stood near the galley. Will we see you again, Mr. Carter? She asked. Marcus adjusted his hoodie slightly. You will, he replied. Not as a threat. Not as a promise. As a certainty. Because the review wouldn't end when the plane parked. It would begin there. And somewhere between takeoff and landing, an entire cabin had learned a lesson that didn't require a title to teach: dignity doesn't ask for permission. The aircraft door opened with a soft mechanical sigh. Passengers stood quickly now, reaching for overhead bins, reclaiming phones, stepping back into ordinary life. But Marcus remained seated for a moment longer. Still, composed, watching. Not the aisle, the crew. Emily was already speaking quietly with the captain near the cockpit door. Lena stood beside them, tablet in hand. Not nervous, now focused. Documentation had already begun. Time stamps. Seat assignments. Recorded statements. Not because Marcus demanded it, because procedure required it. That was the difference. He stood only when the line began to thin. No rush to exit first. No display of privilege. Just alignment with the flow. As he stepped into the aisle, Emily approached him one final time. "Mr. Carter," she said, "respectfully, corporate operations has requested a debrief within 24 hours. They're initiating a broader bias review across regional crews." Marcus adjusted the strap of his laptop bag over his shoulder. "Good," he replied simply. "Will you be leading it?" she asked carefully. He paused for half a beat. "No." She blinked slightly. "I'll be observing." That carried more weight than leadership ever could. The woman from row 14 waited near the front, now eyes lowered. She stepped aside as Marcus approached the exit. For a fraction of a second, she opened her mouth as if to say something. An apology. An explanation. A defense. He didn't stop walking. Not out of cruelty, but because this was no longer personal. At the aircraft door, the captain stood upright. "Thank you for your restraint," he said quietly. Marcus met his gaze. "Thank you for your response." They shook hands. Equal, professional, measured. As Marcus stepped into the jet bridge, the hum of the cabin faded behind him. But the impact would not. Inside, Lena turned to Emily. "Do you think this will change anything?" she asked softly. Emily looked down the now empty aisle. It already did. Because this wasn't about removing one passenger from the wrong seat. It was about exposing the reflex. The assumption. The hierarchy that operates before facts are checked. Marcus walked through the terminal alone. No entourage. No press. No announcement. Just another traveler in a hoodie. But somewhere in the airline's internal system, a review had begun. Training modules would be rewritten. Language would be examined. Protocols would be tightened. Not because a powerful man demanded justice, but because he insisted on standards. And that distinction would echo far longer than any confrontation at 35,000 feet. The terminal buzzed with ordinary noise. Rolling suitcases. Boarding calls.
Coffee machines hissing behind glass counters.
Marcus walked through it all unnoticed. That was the irony. Moments ago, 30 passengers had watched a hierarchy unravel in real time. Now he was just another traveler in a hoodie moving toward baggage claim. His phone vibrated once. Then again. Internal messages stacking quickly. Board alert flight 227 incident confirmed. Regional compliance review triggered. Executive session scheduled 6:00 p.m. EST. He didn't stop walking. He didn't respond. Not yet. Across the terminal, Lena stood near the gate window, watching through the glass as ground crew serviced the aircraft. Emily joined her. "They've already frozen discretionary upgrade privileges for that route," Emily said quietly. Lena blinked. That fast when a name like his is involved, Emily paused. Yes. But it wasn't fear in her voice. It was clarity. Inside the airline's headquarters, hundreds of miles away, a compliance officer replayed cabin audio. The phrase echoed through conference speakers, "Men like you don't fly first class." No one in that room laughed. No one excused it. Because when bias is spoken aloud, it becomes undeniable. Back in the terminal, the woman from row 14 walked past Marcus toward the exit doors. No sunglasses now. No lifted chin. Just quiet. She slowed as she neared him. For a second, it seemed she might speak. Instead, she gave the smallest nod. Not absolution. Not forgiveness. Recognition. Marcus returned it. Then continued walking. His assistant finally called. "Everything's already trending internally," she said. "Legal wants to know if you'll release a statement." He stepped onto the escalator, descending toward the parking level. "No statement," he replied calmly. A pause. Not even a comment. Marcus looked ahead as the doors at the bottom slid open. "Standards don't need press releases," he said. He ended the call. Above him, Flight 227 prepared for its next departure. Same crew, same aircraft, but not the same culture. Because somewhere between gate and landing a single sentence had been tested and dignity had refused to move. The boardroom was quiet when Marcus entered that evening. Floor-to-ceiling glass overlooked the city skyline, lights flickering alive one by one as dusk settled in. A long walnut table stretched beneath recessed lighting. 12 chairs. 8 occupied. No one stood. Not out of disrespect. Out of understanding. They knew why he was there. A screen at the far end of the room displayed a paused, still frame from cabin footage row 2. The moment before the words were spoken, Marcus took his seat without comment. The chairwoman, silver-haired and precise, folded her hands. "Flight 227, she began. "We've reviewed the audio, the escalation, the response time." Marcus nodded once, and he asked. The crew followed manifest protocol once prompted. The initial failure was behavioral, not procedural. There it was. Not a system error. A human reflex. The compliance officer tapped the screen. The audio clip played softly through the room. "Men like you don't fly first class." Silence followed. One board member shifted uncomfortably. Another cleared his throat. "This isn't about one passenger," Marcus said evenly. "It's about assumption preceding verification." The chairwoman leaned forward. "We're drafting mandatory bias interruption training for all frontline staff. Quarterly reviews. Anonymous passenger reporting system enhancements." Marcus listened. No pride. No visible anger. Just calibration. "And upgrade discretion," he asked. "Temporarily frozen pending audit." Good. Not punishment. Correction. The compliance officer added, "We also recommend revising language protocols for crew escalation, removing discretionary tone when status is assumed." Marcus allowed himself the smallest nod. "Status should be earned by process," he said. "Not appearance." Across the table, a younger board member spoke up. "You could have revealed yourself immediately. Stopped it before it escalated." Marcus looked at him calmly. "Yes. A beat." But then nothing would have been exposed. The room understood. If identity fixes the problem, bias remains hidden. If process fixes the problem, culture shifts. The chairwoman closed her folder. "Do you want a public statement issued?" Marcus considered it briefly. Headlines would be easy. Black airline stakeholder humiliated in first class. Outrage cycles. Social media storms. Corporate apologies. Temporary noise. "No," he said. The word landed solid. "We adjust internally. Quietly. Permanently." The skyline outside darkened fully now. City lights steady beneath them. The chairwoman studied him. "You didn't raise your voice." Marcus met her gaze. "I didn't need to." He stood. The meeting wasn't dramatic. No applause. No tension. Just alignment. As he walked toward the glass doors, the chairwoman called after him. "Marcus." He paused. "You understand," she said carefully, "that today could have gone very differently." He turned slightly. "It did," he replied. Then he left. Down in the city streets, traffic moved like veins of light. People argued in restaurants, laughed in bars, checked boarding passes for tomorrow's flights. Most would never know what shifted inside Flight 227. But the next time a passenger in a hoodie stepped into first class, the next time someone said, that can't be your seat, the system would pause. Check the name. Verify before judging. Because dignity had stood in the aisle that day. Calm, unmoved, and refused to relocate. Marcus stepped into the night air, hands in his hoodie pockets, just another silhouette against the skyline. He hadn't raised his voice. He had raised the standard, and that would fly farther than any aircraft ever could.